during a time when the military may be deployed out of the country in response to various conflicts. This is late May 1998. On the next day, Sunday, I returned to pick up the same group that I had picked on day one, which was at their request. This was unusual for a driver to repeat the same unit. The commander told me, "Sorry if I caused you a problem, but this is working well, and I just think you should be in the right place at the right time." Quote, I told him about the objections of the other driver at the airfield on the day before and of the response the driver's complaints induced. Commander Leaker said, "The truth is, joining the troops is for the future establishment of the North American Union as one nation against the world. I repeat, for the future establishment of the North American Union as one nation against the world." Did they mention the Danish Air Force that is training with our Air Force this week? Did they mention that they will be covering our airspace and people after the event? Again, this is during the Clinton administration, 1998. I did not ask what event, because I was sick by what I already knew, and did not want to know any more at the time. Our entourage traveled around the big city beltway to the north. We exited the 695 North, rolling over a very newly paved 4-lane, undivided highway. The scenery went from industrial to suburbia, to rural, and then the fancy road just suddenly stopped. The superhighway was, in a blink, a little 2-lane county country road, lined with farms and very old Civil War era houses. Just on the other side of some railroad tracks we took a left, and went down a lonely road passing the abandoned campus of a private girls' school. The campus's buildings looked refurbished, and yet were clearly unused. On a later excursion I had discovered that the school had been built in the 1800s. And closed recently 1990s for a larger campus closer to the city. As we passed the gates on our left there was a dirt road that seemed to run either on or exactly beside the campus. It was as if the campus were a front for the road, and what was down it. Down the wooded dirt road. I drove the chemicals weapon team. There was a clearing with what used to be a large house for the dean of the school beside the dean's residence. There were 2 large aluminum military buildings, one of which was a mess hall. All of the drivers were invited to eat there and lounge there for the day. One of the guys on a bus told me as he departed, "Did you bring your own today, ma'am?" "Hope so, 'cause it's got to taste better than that." I took the hint, and I did not eat or drink there. Of course my colleagues did, and every one of them could not stay awake all day and slept. Slowly over the course of time we went here every day for 2 weeks. Each driver stopped eating the food, because they did not want to get caught sleeping on the job. On the first day, the reservists were DNA mapped, to be fitted with special weapons. The weapons could only be fired if the owner of the weapon had his or her ID tab inserted into the weapon properly. If inserted properly, the weapon would match the DNA and only fire if the user was owner. When the day ended and the men boarded the bus, they were -2. I was told to drive to the medical building to get them. We went down deep into the woods, and then there was a clearing with another aluminum building. On the left was a huge hill that had been dug open from the side, and an enormous structure was being built under the hill. When the newer reservists asked why we were at medical, the answer was, because Dean and Johns refused to be mapped. And so Dean and Johns were sent here to help them make up their minds to be mapped. The newer reservist asked, "What's the big deal?" "It's just identification." The man who had told of his terrible medical condition said, "Look, the weapons are special ops issue, so that if necessary, the military can provide protection to the commander-in-chief. In the future, should the people here cease to support him, the weapons we are training with are to be issued to whatever forces need to calm the streets in the event of unrest." Dean and Johns don't object to DNA mapping. They object to having to sign a statement pledging their undying loyalty to the Republic. And it says President and agreeing to fire on American citizens. When told to do so, I was agog and flabbergasted. Americans training to fire on American. Under the presidency of William Jefferson Clinton. Americans, Brits, Canadians, Germans, Aussies, and Danish soldiers. Training side by side on American soil. To fire on American citizens, when told to do so. In those moments on the bus I understood that the reason for the foreign military was because they arrive here with the void of attachment necessary for firing on protesting Americans. This was the end of day one at the abandoned school. The next day the leakster got on the bus and told me to pull my bus out to the main road and find a nice quiet place under a big shade tree that covered the whole bus. He told me I should rest on the floor and keep my eyes shaded, and he gave me some thick sunglasses. My soldier of non-fortune also told me to keep my headphones on, and don't come out of the bus from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., no matter what. The same officer told his team today and for the next 4 days we are going to have experience training. We are going to experience the effects of some new weapons. I am very good at doing what I am told. My friend of unfortune must have planted that tree grove and trimmed it out just for bus 192. I backed in and waited. At 10:55 I lay down on the floor, glasses in place and headphones on, radio playing. There was a series of flashes, just like camera flashes. My radio died on the first flash, and has never worked since. Even though wearing glasses. To this day, flashes like that anywhere, even in movies, cause me to have mild seizures. The other 9 drivers there all had health traumas the next few months, and most were never able to drive again. The flashes were followed by extreme quiet. A horse in the field next to where I was lay down on his side and never got up the rest of the day. The flashes came about 22 minutes apart from 11 a.m. until 1:20 something. At 3:45 a knock on the bus startled me, and one of the reservists said, "Hey, come and get us." So we went in to get them. They all slept the 50-minute trip to the barracks. On Monday we were back at it again. Only this time when we went down the dirt road. It had been paved, and about 30 acres or trees on each side were cleared. I mean, gone. And there were huge gaping holes in the ground. On both sides of the road. In the holes, they had poured long, wide slabs of concrete. Over the next 2 weeks. Every morning the work completed. Was work that takes months and years in the private sector. Only I never saw any crews of workers. One of the new recruits stated, "Wow, the Corps works fast, don't they?" Quote, I assumed he meant the Army Corps of Engineers. The leakster answered with a snicker. "If you only knew. Nah, you can't handle how they do this." As he patted me on the shoulder. Each day the reservists went to a different training area, and did differing weapon testing and training, with the foreign troops brought here by the other buses. Eventually every bus did a turn at this hidden place. The other drivers told me that their foreign riders' conversations were about how terrible the whores were that they've been giving us. You can't even give us a good piece of ass. Like they promised when we signed on for this. Nice what the president was paying these foreign military units mercenaries for learning how to shoot Americans if necessary, piece of ass. As the days went by, I watched the building of what I call Buchenwald 2. The layout was identical. I know what they built under and on top of the ground. In the woods behind the abandoned private elite school. There are gas chambers and interrogation rooms. There are fallout shelters. And one of the largest operations buildings I have ever seen. There are barrack-like shelters that have interiors that look just like the inside of the gulags. On the last day, as I turned onto what was once the dirt road, just around the first bend there had been erected a gate. On either side of the road were massive rock stone pillars that were supporting